Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's Monday, November the 18th at 7 p.m. We're at the Township Office of Adelaide Metcalfe, and it's our second meeting of the month. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor Kingma?
Yes, I'd like to declare item 10B. I essentially authorize the report that's being recommended by staff.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight unless there's any errors or additions? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Nordoff. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, you've had a chance to read the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of November the 4th? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is the Committee of Adjustments. We have a recommendation that Council convene as a Committee of Adjustment at 7:01 p.m. I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. The purpose of the Committee of Adjustment meeting is to provide the Committee of Adjustment and the general public an opportunity to hear from all interested parties regarding the application being discussed this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. In respect to the Committee of Adjustment applications, only the applicant or a public body can appeal a Committee of Adjustment decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This must be filed within 20 days from the date of decision. If you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to our clerk, Mr. Michael Barnier. So at this time, next on the agenda is item 6A. We have an application for minor variance A05-2024, the owners Hog Wild Farms Limited, care of Karen and Steve Sanders, and the address under discussion is 1092 Melwood Drive. So I'll turn the meeting over at this time to Ashley, and Ashley Sawyer is now our new planner, but not new to the planning world. There was a bit of a shift at the county, and just to give everybody a different perspective of Middlesex County. So welcome, Ashley, and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Clerk. So the subject lands are located in an agricultural area, and as noted, they have a municipal address of 1092 Melwood Drive. The lands are approximately 100 acres in size and currently contain a single detached residential dwelling, an existing pig barn, numerous agricultural structures, and agricultural land in crop production. The subject lands are located in an agricultural area per the Middlesex County and the Adelaide Metcalfe official plans, and they are zoned general agricultural in the Adelaide Metcalfe zoning bylaw. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to seek relief from the township zoning bylaw to permit for the construction of a new 9,272 square meter pig barn with a minimum setback of 300 meters or 985 feet to the nearest neighboring dwelling at 1040 Melwood Drive, whereas the minimum distance separation calculations indicate that a minimum setback of 487 meters or 1,598 feet is required. The applicant's consultant has confirmed that all existing structures and the proposed structure on the property, which are capable of housing livestock, have been included in these calculations. The owners note that the new pig barn is proposed so that they can transition their current operation to loose sow housing. This is something that's required of all operators by 2029. However, processing and packing plants have already begun to mandate this and are unlikely to enter new contracts or partnerships with producers who have not yet transitioned. The barn location has been selected by the owners due to the existing treed area on the adjacent property at 1040 Melwood Drive, and it'll help protect their livestock from airborne diseases. Additionally, the owners wish to reduce the amount of land taken out of crop production and reduce their costs for driveway installation, which would cost them more to install a longer driveway to a barn setback farther than their existing proposal. They also wish to maintain future flexibility should the existing barn be connected to the proposed barn to facilitate a more efficient animal movement and care. The Adelaide Metcalfe official plan and zoning bylaw note that MDS setbacks are required to be met for any new livestock facilities prior to building permit issuance. And MDS setbacks are used to prevent land use conflicts and minimize nuisance complaints from odor generated by livestock facilities, manure storages, and anaerobic digesters. Guidelines for MDS setbacks are found in the MDS separation document published by OMAFA, which was previously OMAFRA. The guidelines note that the direction of prevailing winds, surrounding topography, and presence of trees, berms, or other screening mechanisms are not considered in these calculations. However, they can be considered to vary or reduce a setback where appropriate. The guidelines do note that MDS setbacks should not be reduced except in limited site-specific circumstances that meet the intent of the document, which ultimately is to avoid land use compatibility conflicts. No concerns or comments were noted by the circulated agencies or by members of the public prior to this evening. County Emergency Services did note that if a new barn has its own new entrance off of Melwood Drive, a new 911 address would be required. Planning staff are of the opinion that the variance is not considered minor in nature due to the scale of the requested setback reduction, which would not minimize land use conflicts between the proposed barn and the neighboring properties, including 1040 Melwood Drive, which has an existing dwelling on it. While no other neighboring dwellings currently appear to be located within the required setback, if the reduction is approved, it will essentially sterilize 1156 Melwood Drive, which is the property directly to the east, from being able to construct a farm dwelling in the future, and it will also make it challenging to find an acceptable location for farm dwellings at 1095 and 1159 Melwood Drive that's not significantly set back from the road. So staff are ultimately of the opinion that alternate locations on the property appear they could better meet the setback requirements. We do note that the owner has cited prevailing winds and tree cover as mitigating factors. These measures may not be reliable enough to fully address the potential conflicts with the scale of the reduction. And for the reasons summarized, as well as provided for in greater detail in my report, we are recommending the application be denied, as the foretests of the minor variance do not appear to be met. However, the committee may wish to follow staff's denial recommendation, defer for staff and the applicant to work together to come up with a revised location, approve or approve with conditions. Thank you.
Okay, Ashley, thank you. Karen, or is it Bryce? Yeah, do either of you want to speak to the application?
Yes, we have, we give.
Oh.
We set back 1,370 feet from the dwelling to the new, yes, that one.
Sorry, Bryce, you have to talk in the microphone. Here, why don't you pop in the chair there by Ashley and, oh, okay, or do something, whatever. Ashley will share, sure.
Yeah, so, we would like to propose a new minor variance, a new setback. We'll go back 1,370 feet away from the dwelling to the west, as opposed to the original 982 feet. We'll take as many feet closer as we can get, I suppose, for the minor variance, just to reduce laneway costs and hydro costs to the building, and well, yeah.
Okay, so you'd like that amendment to the application?
Yep.
Okay. All right, any other comments from you?
No.
No? Okay, thanks, Bryce. Council, do you have any questions for the applicant or the planner? Councilor McKinnon?
Through you, Mayor Sue, to Ashley. Ashley, the revised schedule that we've just received tonight, could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you. So it does still impact the same neighboring properties. However, I would say that it impacts them to a lesser extent. So for instance, the original proposal with the red outline, if the properties on the south side of Melwood Drive were to want to construct a farm dwelling for that agricultural property in the future, it would require about 1,000-foot setback for them. So as you can see with the blue, with the proposed revision, it would impact that less than what was originally proposed. It still does impact the dwelling at 1040 Melwood Drive, however, to a lesser extent. And there is that tree covering and brush there as well. 1156 Melwood is still arguably one of the most impacted. However, it does open up a small corner in the front for them. And again, it would reduce the amount of relief required for them if they decided they wanted a farm dwelling in the future.
Thanks, Bryce. You can sit back now. Is there anyone in the gallery that has any? Oh, sorry, Mike, did you have a question? Sorry. Oh, are you okay right now? Okay. Sorry, I missed you there. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this application, either for or against? Bruce? Oh, Ted, sorry.
Is that, I can't tell, the blue circle, is that still affecting my property?
Because he's directly across the road.
No, I'm not,
Oh, you're not?
I have a, on the, it would,
Oh, that's
affect,
Ted.
there's a building site there.
So with the proposed revision, it would affect that property less. It still does pick up a small corner there. No, so you'd still have sufficient space to be able to build a dwelling there. So essentially, yes,
There's a building there.
yes.
It's gotta be fairly close to that area. I can't, okay, so the blue.
Yes.
is the new proposal.
The blue is the new proposal, so it would bring you out of that for the vast majority. It might just pick up that front corner there a little bit. But I think that is definitely an improved proposal from the original.
This doesn't seem like a minor variance to me. Half the distance.
Yeah, so the original proposal was for a setback that was required of 487 meters or 1,598 feet. The revised would work out to approximately 417 meters or 1,370 feet, which equates to a variance that would be required of 69 meters or approximately 227 feet. So that's about a third of what the original proposal was asking for.
Mike?
So through the mayor to Ashley, and to answer Bruce's question, basically,
Good.
if this barn was set at the 1598 feet, then that does not affect Bruce's property at all then. Correct?
Sorry, for the 1598, like the original amount, it does affect it quite substantially, so that's the red.
No, the required, not the proposed.
Oh, okay,
So if that one's at 1,370,
Mhm.
so if it went where you said originally, it was required at 1598, does that affect that neighbor property that he just brought up at all then?
Slightly with the revision, but with the original proposal, it would have affected arguably a substantial amount.
The red amount, yes, the 985, yeah, but we're not talking about that one.
So now we're talking
Right.
about the blue amount.
It'll still pick up the front corner there, which something to keep in mind would be you'd still have the required setbacks for the front yard. I don't anticipate that it would negatively impact it to like a large degree by any means. And it does look like that building envelope is almost entirely outside of that.
So then at the 1598 feet, which would go through, it wouldn't affect that property at all then, correct?
It still picks up a small corner of it, but it
Very,
it
very
shouldn't pick
small.
up the building
It
envelope.
wouldn't affect him to do anything at that point.
Not on the building lot that's there. Yeah.
Okay, Ted, does that answer your question?
Sure, but wasn't Mike asking about what the original setback would be?
No, the original proposed will not go through.
Okay.
Like that red won't,
If it was to the bylaw or whatever you call it, it would be even further back.
the barn just goes farther back. Then that doesn't affect your property then.
No, I can tell by the blue line, that it just catches the corner. of the
Yeah.
lot.
Could I ask a question?
Yes,
So I
go
built it right across the road. Does that affect, okay, say if I want to build a house there, would that be denied doing that? Where the building on is?
So are you at this property right here, the 1095?
Yeah, 1095.
This one right here?
Yeah, I got read it on that way, and then you see the building site.
Yes, yep. So the original proposal, it was going to pick up a substantial portion of that, which if you needed to do a building permit for a single detached dwelling for the farm use, it would be requiring, I think it was approximately 1,000-foot setback from the front line, which is why staff have recommended denial because it did impact quite a few properties. However, with the revised proposal, it works out to approximately 300 feet from the center line of Melwood Drive. So it is opening up a substantial portion of your property, more for potential building locations. And that would not be hitting this building envelope back here that you have.
No, I couldn't really understand.
Oh, sorry. So
Area is where they're proposing that they do it now. The red area was the original.
Okay, you change your,
the applicants have brought forward a requested revision. So yeah, so the red was original and it would have impacted quite a large portion of your property. But with the blue, you can see it's a significant reduction, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so, yeah.
Counselor McKinnon?
Through you to the applicant. I would prefer to see this application deferred. It's been brought on tonight and it's not an easy, as the landowners have attested, an easy ask for us to look at it and say, okay, we're going to not have any conflicts with the neighboring properties. So I would prefer to see it deferred.
Okay, any other comments? Counselor Brody?
Through you, Sue, to Ashley, I think the concern, and Karen and Bryce can attest to this, is if it gets deferred, you're talking into December, which then that defers a building permit again, which could kick it to January with holidays and everything. Which I don't think the applicant really wants to do. They could speak next to this, but basically, if it had to go to, so I guess this is a question for Ashley, if it has to go to 1598 feet, that's not affecting those neighbor properties. We could approve that tonight, basically, correct?
So through Mayor Clark, so if it's going to meet the required 1598, then a minor variance technically wouldn't be necessary at all. That being said, even with this proposed blue, they're still proposing, I think it's 1,370 feet approximately instead. So if they can meet the MDS requirements, then no, they don't need a minor variance application.
Okay, any other comments?
Just
Yes, go ahead.
maybe you should ask what Karen and Bryce think about.
Yeah, if I can speak to that.
Yeah, come on up. Karen, please.
I do appreciate the fact that the neighbors have come. Thank you for doing that. This is not something that we know you fellows, and we don't want to impose, that's for sure. Some of these changes are our government regulated changes that we need to make happen. The thing for us is it's just the cost, the laneways and the hydro. To put a laneway further back, we're talking 100,000. We're talking another 100,000 for hydro to meet that barn. And now we're into the middle of that field. So now that field is really cut up in terms of cropping. So we'll lose on cropping side too. So that's a few things that are of our concern. And secondly, it's true. If we do wait till December, January, we get into the January and there's new building codes coming. And I don't exactly know what that entails. I could certainly look into that in more depth as well. But again, it's added cost, I think, with these building codes that might be changing pretty drastically. So yeah, yeah, if the 1370, well, to be honest with you, when Bryce and I initially started this, we wanted the barn right up along the bush line because the biosecurity for hogs they are so susceptible to diseases and such. The bush line would really just break the wind and so on, because a lot of those diseases are airborne. But we did keep the neighbors into consideration. I mean, Mike's property is way too close. We do totally understand that. We are going back a substantial amount. I guess I'm just asking if that is something that would be acceptable, and then we'll go from there. It's costly. It's just super costly. And it's a young guy. This is a farm that he is doing on his own. he's 20 years old. He's starting, to be his own operator and do his own thing. It's quite costly for these young agriculture guys to start. So I'm, as a mom, I'm just trying to help the boy out as well. So, but no, and again, I appreciate the neighbors coming. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Counselor Brody?
I'd like to move that we, for acceptance or for a motion, I'd move for a motion that we, approach the 13, does that say 1370? Whatever that blue proposal is. I would move that we approve that tonight.
Okay, so we have a motion, a mover to accept the application with the amendment of the but she didn't make a motion, she just made a comment. That it be modified to the 1370. Is there a seconder for that? Counselor Nordoff? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have a recommendation next that the I didn't read all this. You don't want all that.
That's the denial.
Yeah,
I
so,
think I have an amendment to 1370
Perfect.
feet.
okay, thank you. Okay, then we have a recommendation that the council adjourn the Committee of Adjustment at 7:21 PM. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Counselor McKinnon, second by Counselor Brody, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, if you guys want to go, you can go, but if you want to stay because you think we're entertaining, you can do that too, I guess, so. Thanks, Ashley, for coming. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have delegations and presentations, and our first item up is 7A, and it's the Ontario Provincial Police update. And we've got with us tonight our Inspector Ross Stewart, the Detachment Commander for the Middlesex Detachment. So we'll wait for those guys to maybe leave. So, well, welcome to the meeting, Ross. Good to see you. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and thank you to council for the invite once again to come and to speak. It's always a pleasure. There's a couple of items that I would like to speak to tonight. One is a brief overview of the report that I've provided to council in relation to what's been happening from a policing standpoint year to date in 2024. I know that I provided that report to a little bit earlier in the week. I'm just going to touch on some highlights of that. And then, of course, I welcome any questions that you may have about specifics. The report that I provided is the new template that has been standardized under the Community Safety and Policing Act, which came into effect as of April the 1st. And one of the benefits of that is that we have finally, after many years, standardized the report and the information that we're providing to councils as well as our police service boards. So that is what you've been provided with. And really, it provides a breakdown of a wide variety of different things. Motor vehicle collisions is where the report starts. And I'll just touch on a couple of things very high level in regard to that. Within Adelaide Metcalfe, we've had one fatal motor vehicle collision thus far in 2024. This is a decrease from 2 at this time last year, and we had 1 in 2022. So from a fatality standpoint, we're fairly consistent. And overall, as it relates to collisions themselves, again, we're very consistent with what we saw in the previous year. Which was a notable decrease from 2022. So I'm pleased to see that that reduction from last year has been maintained as well. That's not to suggest for a second, though, that any fatality is too many, but nevertheless, it is good to see that that the decrease that we saw in 2023 has been maintained. The vast majority of the collisions that we have had have been property damage only with no injuries. From an overall call for service standpoint, we have seen an increase in the number of calls for service year to date. Not a large increase, approximately 10%, But that is consistent with what we have seen throughout the county as well as through most of the municipalities province-wide. We are noting an increase in calls for service across the board, increasing up above pre-COVID related levels. And that is an important piece for the second item that I will talk about tonight. As we continue to move through the report, we also provide a breakdown of the primary causes of what fatal motor vehicle collisions have been. I think I've spoken to this in the past. We refer to this as the big four. And these are the factors that will see one or multiple factors involved in almost without exception every fatal motor vehicle collision. That being speed, lack of seatbelt use, distracted driving, or impairment by drug or alcohol. The good news is that in the fatality from not only the two from 2023, but also for the one this year, none of those factors were involved in the collisions that occurred within the municipality. So that is some good news. As we continue through the report, we then provide a breakdown of different calls that we attend, and specifically a breakdown of the charges associated to those. We have seen a fairly notable increase in non-criminal code traffic or non-criminal code, criminal code non-traffic related charges. So those would be assaults, those types of things that have nothing to do with traffic. We've also seen an increase in criminal code traffic related offenses. And as it applies to this municipality, that is specifically for impaired driving. We have seen an increase locally in that, which is concerning. From a Highway Traffic Act standpoint, you will see a small decrease in the number of charges that we have laid year to date. Yeah, and if you just keep scrolling there, you'll come to where I am. There we are. Thank you. Yep. Normally, I would be concerned if I saw a decrease in enforcement. However, and Mayor Clark is aware of this from our OPP detachment board meeting a couple weeks ago. Across the county, we've seen a massive increase in enforcement numbers, which is a very good thing. Nobody likes to get a ticket, but that is part of the solution to problematic driving on our roadways. The reason why that is important for this municipality is that enforcement plays a role, not just where the ticket's laid, but future driving behavior for those people. So you can imagine if you're driving from London to Sarnia and you get a speeding ticket in Strathroy, that is going to affect your driving behavior when you're in Sarnia and when you're on your way back. So as you pass through one municipality to another, those enforcement efforts definitely have a positive impact on poor driving. What I will say, though, is that for the offense notices that we have laid, a lot of focus has been on those big four again, and in particular speeding and in seatbelt or lack of seatbelt use. But again, as I mentioned, we've seen an increase in impaired driving as well. Again, consistent throughout the county, which is unfortunate. As we move along, we provide some numbers with regard to e-ticketing warnings. This is interesting information to have in the report. I'm not sure how useful it necessarily is. Personally speaking, I'm not a big fan of warnings. And I know that maybe that's not well received, but the reason for that is it is a statistical fact that people who are involved in preventable fatal motor vehicle collisions, so one of the big four is at fault. When we look at the license history that those individuals have, we see it again and again and again, either reduction in speed to save demerit points or warnings. And what that says to us is warnings are not a deterrent. It's not to say that some won't take it and be grateful and change their behavior. But unfortunately, statistically, we do see this again and again and again, and it's extremely unfortunate. So I would rather have someone get a ticket and have to pay that ticket and their driving behavior change and the roads become safer than someone be happy with the warning. Moving on, we provide a summary of violent related crime, and there's quite a bit of a breakdown that goes into that. And you'll see that what you're going to see is 180% increase in violent crime year to date over 2023. I appreciate that that number in and of itself is perhaps shocking if that's all that the context for it. But you know, the reality is that where we see that increase, it's in relating to assaults, and it's relating to other offenses where there's a threat of violence. So not necessarily violence occurring. And keep in mind, an assault can be a simple push of somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an outwardly violent offense with like a weapon, for example. So, you know, really, those are the only two types of violent related crime that we have seen in 2024. So as much as that 180% on the surface looks concerning, you know, having looked at each individual call within these 14 over the course of the year, I'm not concerned that we have a violence related problem within the municipality. As we move along, the next section, and this is the last section that I'll specifically speak to unless there's any questions, is property crime. And I know that this is arguably one of the most important things to any of the municipalities that I meet with, and rightly so. And the good news is that we have seen quite a notable decrease in the amount of property crime that has been happening year to date. But again, the context is important to that. So we see a 33% decrease in break and enters, which is excellent. But in fairness, that's 2 less than last year. So good news, but I think we have to take the good with the bad when we look at the statistics. And I would just encourage council to always look not just at the percentage, but look at the numbers as well, because sometimes the percentage can be high when there's not a tremendous amount of those types of occurrences happening. The other thing that I would point out is that we show an 8% decrease in fraud. And I'm going to suggest that that is probably the most underreported offense that we deal with currently. We have, thankfully, I think, gotten in front of a lot of the local fraud-related items that have gone on. Of course, we're very familiar with the CRA scams, the grandparent scams, those types of things. We've recently seen an increase province-wide in romance scams asking for Bitcoin. And it's very unfortunate, but good folks are still falling victim to this. I think that lots of people have had the opportunity to sit in one of our educational sessions that we do on a regular basis to try and build a little bit of capacity within the community for what's a scam and what isn't. And I can tell you that we field calls on a regular basis with people just calling in to say, hey, is this a fraud? What should I do? And as a result, we're not actually having an officer dispatched and we're not generating a call for service. We're just simply providing advice. So that's good news. I don't believe that we're necessarily seeing less fraud. I think folks are just being more aware of it and less victimization, which is good. So I'll leave it to council to skim through some of the other items that are included within the report. It gives some breakdowns in relation to youth crime, mental health related calls, those types of things, which traditionally are not items that we have necessarily reported on, but that we're now mandated by law to do so. So pending any questions in relation to the report, that's the presentation for that portion of it. And then I would like to pivot and talk a little bit about the OPP billing model and some of the increases that I know all of the municipalities have seen in recent weeks.
Hey, Ross, before you talk about the billing pieces, are there any questions on the report so far? I think it's nice to see we live in a fairly safe community and we're very insulated from the opioid crisis that we see in the bigger cities, and that's demonstrated by the numbers here. Okay, so back to you, Ross, and you can talk about the financial impact to us.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk. I will say from the outset This is the fourth municipal council that I've met with in relation to this. And that is completely fair. Frankly, all of my detachment commander colleagues around the province are facing the same questions that I am in relation to why have all the municipalities in Ontario seen at times some very notable increases in the cost of policing from the OPP. If my math is correct, Adelaide Metcalfe has seen an increase of approximately 14% between the cost of policing from 2024 to 2025. And I'd just like to provide a little bit of context as to why that has happened. As you may recall, the way that the OPP builds or structures their billing model, it's predicated upon a number of things. Number one, you have your base service, which includes the salaries for and benefits for our officers, amongst many other things. That's the largest component of the bill from OPP, and in fact, it's 90% of what any municipality will receive. 90% comes from officer salaries and benefits. The second component is calls for service. Each municipality is billed based upon individual calls for service, based upon the type of call. So for example, a fence dispute that is easily managed and quickly managed by one officer costs less money to the municipality than a homicide where there's a lot of resources for a long period of time that are focused on that. And then the third component that goes into the bill is things like court security and prisoner transportation costs. So I'm going to work backwards here through those three things to describe to you as to why you have seen the 14% increase. From a prisoner transportation and court cost, those are spread over a 4-year sliding average as our calls for service. And we have now, as a result, that average has moved out of what we had was a notable decline during COVID-19, where we went to virtual court, where we weren't transporting prisoners with our prisoner transport officers, and the courts weren't physically in session. We've obviously moved out of that now, and we've returned to levels that were either at or above pre-COVID levels. So the decrease that we saw during COVID-19 would have had a positive impact on the bills that you've received in the last couple of previous years. But now that we've moved past that, you've seen that increase coming along. That is a very small portion of this increase, though. Same with calls for service. Again, it works on the 4-year average. We did see a notable decrease in calls for service during COVID for a variety of reasons. People were hesitant to call the police because they didn't want people coming to their home, and officers were doing less proactive work because of the lack of interaction with people, and frankly, a lot less people on the roadways, as we all know. Again, we've moved outside of that 4-year average now. We've seen calls for service not only return to pre-COVID levels, but exceeding them. Again, that accounts for a small portion of the increase, which now brings us to your base service and specifically to salaries and benefits. And I will tell you directly that a recent increase in salary and benefits for our uniform members is the primary reason why you've seen such an increase in your bill. The OPPA, which is the OPP Association, which governs all 7,000 of our uniform and civilian members. They've been without a contract since the end of 2022 and only just recently ratified a new 4-year contract as of July the 18th. And so in a very real sense, we're now playing catch up from a salary standpoint. The officers received 4.75% for 2023, 4.5% for 2024, and then 2.5% for 25 and for 26. So unfortunately, all at once, municipalities are now faced with the increase relating to 23 as well as 24. And that has, what I will tell you is that's just put the OPP officers on par with what other police services are making. By no means does that put us in the stratosphere above everybody else. It does put us at the top, but we're talking dollars and cents. And in a very real sense, it just made us competitive with other police services. There is a retroactive pay component that goes with that for the last year and a half. And that plays into it, of course, as well. So, you know, when we look at salaries and benefits accounting for 90% of the overall bill and then trying to catch up financially to a contract that's already a year and a half old, that is the reason why the municipalities are seeing the increases that they're seeing. The other thing that I will note is that when you receive your estimates every spring, one thing that the Municipal Policing Bureau with OPP does or doesn't do when they're preparing those estimates is they do not account for what may or may not happen from a collective agreement standpoint. And when you received those reports, the collective agreement had not been finalized, let alone ratified at that point. So they will not project ahead to sort of use a crystal ball to what may it look like. They're going to give you those estimates based upon what we know at that time. So that's why you're going to see such a discrepancy between the estimate that you received earlier in the year and now what you've received actually in front of you over the last few weeks. So it's not lost on me that this is a lot of money. I know that with every municipal council, you have very difficult decisions to make about how you're going to spend every dollar, and that this has a tremendous impact on what you can say yes to, what you have to say maybe to, or what you have to say no to. So I completely understand that. From my standpoint, I hope that this at least provides a little bit of information as to why you've seen the numbers that you have, and I would welcome any questions regarding that.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Are there any questions? I think you did a great job putting some context around what's happened. And Johnny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year our bill actually went down a little bit, I think.
That's correct. It was a slight increase last year.
Increase or
Oh, sorry,
decrease?
decrease.
Decrease. Yeah, because they use that 4-year rolling average. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about where we were in 2020 and where we are now. And I think you did a great job explaining the salary component as well. So, any questions for Ross? If not, I'd like to thank you for taking the time tonight to come and speak with us. And like I said, to put some context around the numbers that we were looking at. Nobody likes to spend more, but we also understand, and you recognize as well, this is a non-discretionary expense that we're obligated to pay. So having said all of that, thanks again for coming, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
Take
Good night.
care. Drive careful.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 7B from the Middlesex County regarding procurement services. Welcome to Josh White, our procurement services manager for Middlesex County.
Good evening, everyone, and through the mayor to council. County Procurement Services has just begun supporting the lower tier municipalities. Adelaide Metcalfe is actually the first that we are supporting. So I thought it'd be a good time to get in front of council, kind of explain what we do, how we've supported the township so far, and what we envision the service becoming. In the essence of time, there are some things in this presentation that I'll go over at a very high level. If there is anything that council would like me to go into more detail with, please feel free to ask me at the end of the presentation. And with that, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So just a quick slide about how we kind of got here. So at the county, just like Adelaide Metcalfe, there was no procurement staff prior to 2022. The county received funding through the province's municipal modernization program, which ultimately recommended the creation of my department and position. Once on board, initial support was just for the county and MLPS with the odd consultation for the lower tier municipalities when it was requested. And then this past summer, we hired a procurement officer with the intent of supporting the lower tiers. That procurement officer is on board and initial support has begun in the fall with Adelaide Metcalfe and a couple other municipalities at this point, with the intent of rolling this out to all the remaining lower tier municipalities by the beginning of 2025. Next slide, please. So our responsibilities, first and foremost, is to achieve best value for taxpayer dollars in a transparent manner. How we do that is we run competitive public procurement processes, increase our economies of scale wherever possible. And it's also important to note that best value doesn't mean just the best price. We're looking to make sure that we get the rights and goods and services that are being procured. We also mitigate risk, which simply is reducing the chances of a legal claim against the county or township. How we do that is through transparency, having policies like a procurement bylaw and set procedures, as well as following trade agreements, legislation, and legal precedent. And then finally, improving efficiency in the sense that procurement is virtually all we do. We know the ins and outs, we know the do's and don'ts. So with that, we'd like to take the burden off township staff so that they don't have to spend their days writing a 50-page procurement document. We can jump in and help with that, and they can focus on other aspects of their role. Next slide, please. So again, what we do specifically, administration and adherence to the procurement bylaw, again, that by and large drives all our actions and recommendations. Facilitating the procurement process. So council will see requests for proposals, tenders, quotes often. We also consult on when it's the best time to use buying groups such as AMOs, Procurement, OECM's another one. And then there's the Elgin, Middlesex, Oxford Purchasing Cooperative as well. Moving on to the next slide. Mitigating risk, I already spoke to that. Contract management, we help develop and execute the contracts, which takes the burden off the county legal team. And driving efficiency, as I mentioned earlier. Vendor management, it's not something that a council would typically hear too much about, but it is a significant portion of my department's role. Debriefs in particular, following an RFP process in the last 5 years has probably increased tenfold. So it's something that's it's a significant part of a role, but it's an important role when vendors submit proposals and they're not successful. They like to understand why and how they complete. It's important feedback for the vendor, and it's also important feedback for the county or the township, because the next time that goes out, you'll hopefully be getting stronger proposals the next go around to have more competitive prices. Next slide. So support for Adelaide Metcalfe. So we formally began supporting the township in September 2024. You can see the bids that we started there, and we're about to do another one with the fire department shortly. But even before 2024, legal services, I understand, helped Adelaide Metcalfe quite a bit. They were still reaching out to procurement for questions from time to time as well. So we've always been involved, and partially because of that involvement is why Adelaide Metcalfe was the first township that we supported. And then you'll see there the update for the procurement bylaw in early 2025. So the early draft is about 95% complete. That'll be going to township staff shortly so we can review it and then hopefully get it, if not by the end of the year, in early 2025 for council review. And then kind of where we're going, online bidding. So we've implemented that at Adelaide Metcalfe to some extent. We're cognizant about how that works with smaller townships, especially the challenges with local business. So we'll kind of navigate the nuances as we continue with that and kind of pick the best times to keep going online versus going back to the old physical copies or emails. Identifying common purchases, that again is economies of scale, looking at items everybody's buying trucks, everybody's paving asphalt, things of that nature, where we can leverage a broader group and make more purchases. Hopefully it will give townships like Adelaide Metcalfe better pricing than if they were to go out on their own for those. Centralized vendor reference database. So what I mean by that is that if a municipality goes out to tender, I'll use an example of asphalt paving again, and they receive the references as they always do. There will be the ability for that municipality to reach out to any other municipality within the county to get a reference as well. The reason why we're going to formalize this is that when we have submitted tenders or RFPs, We're given 3 references when we check. I've been doing this for 15 years, both privately and publicly, and conducted thousands of reference checks, and I can count on 2 hands how many bad references that I've given. A good contractor is not going to give a bad reference. So hopefully in the future, as this program develops, we'll have language in our tenders that we can utilize references within the county, so that if a particular bidder doesn't list one of the other county municipalities as a reference because of a negative experience, we're still able to reach out and utilize that reference to make the informed decision. And then shared professional rosters, that would be things like consultants, engineers, very much the same thing, economy of scales. And if improving efficiencies where all municipalities can go off the same list and receive the same pricing, hopefully alleviating the needs to go for multiple procurements when we can just do it once. And again, same with shared contractor programs. I'm thinking things like electricians, plumbings, drain excavators, things of that nature. So I've reached the end. Like I said, I'm trying to be quick for you. Hopefully everybody can get home easy, but I'd like to thank you for your time. I think a program like this, and I guess probably most importantly, I should mention, this is included on the levy. So unlike IT services and legal, you're not paying for our hours used. We're here. So please leverage us, and Morgan and his team definitely are. I feel like it benefits some of the smaller population townships because of what I mentioned with the economies of scale, but also to just having access to people who have expertise in procurement and all that, hopefully making their jobs easier. So again, they can focus on other aspects of their role. So thank you. Any questions?
That's great, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh? No, it seems to be working well so far, and as long as we're able to save some money, that's the end game with us, basically. So, okay, seeing there are no questions for Josh, I'd just like to thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate that, and for those that haven't met Josh, you have now. So there we go. All righty, thanks again. Okay, next up on the agenda is our consent agenda, number 8. Is there anything anyone wants removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then we have a recommendation that items A8 through 8F listed under the heading of consent agenda for November the 18th, 2024 be adopted as recommended. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Kingma, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. We have 9A next up. One resolution. The Township of Pushlinch is asking for support regarding agricultural lands and sustainable development regarding provincial projects. Okay, no movement there. Then we have a recommendation that council receive and file correspondence 9A. Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up are staff reports. The first one is regarding the cost of living adjustment for 2025, and I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our treasurer, Johnny Pereira.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through to council. As part of the regular maintenance of the 3 township compensation programs, the cost of living adjustment here looks to age their programs annually by a COLA factor. Those 3 programs include the staff, council, and the volunteer firefighters. As outlined in the report, staff does use 2 methods primarily for their recommendation here tonight. One is a desk research exercise looking at approved COLA increases from area municipalities, including those identified as compensation comparators for the township, as well as the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. So based on the desktop research, 2 to 3% seem to be the common factor being used across comparators that we've heard back from, or they've actually been approved. So again, we're still pretty early, so not everyone has approved rates as of yet. In addition, for CPI, for the Ontario September to September, that increase was 1.9%. So based on that data, staff is recommending a 2% increase to all 3 programs. The total 2025 budget impact for that across all three programs is $25,096. In addition, staff is also looking for pre-budget approval to continue with the realized efficiencies in the year-end payroll processing. And that just minimizes any retroactive payroll adjustments for January 1st. The recommendation is to approve the report as presented, but be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Johnny? Okay, seeing none, then we have a recommendation that the staff wage grid, council remuneration, and the volunteer firefighter compensation program be adjusted by a cost of living increase of 2% for 2025 and receive pre-budget approval. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor McKinnon. Seconder. Second by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, 10B is the 2025 Council Grant Program, and I'll turn this also over to our treasurer for presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through to council. The 2025 Council Grant Program is available to the community to apply between October 1st and October 31st. The purpose of this program is to provide municipal funds or other forms of assistance in limited amounts to community groups and organizations that warrant municipal support. For the year, the township received just one application this year. It was graded using the application review process to ensure a fair and consistent review to ensure it meets all eligibility requirements under the policy. So the one application that we did receive was from the Kerwood Adelaide Metcalfe Optimist Club, requesting $6,050 in financial assistance for various community events. In addition, to the financial request was in-kind contributions, and this is for various park rentals and printer use at the township. So after reviewing and factoring in the fees outlined in the township's fees and charges bylaw, staff did find that the in-kind contributions exceeded the allowance under the policy. So staff is recommending reducing the cash request by the overage of the in-kind contributions. So staff is recommending a total allotment of $4,750 for 2025 to the Kerwood Adelaide Metcalfe Optimist Club. The recommendation is to approve the report as presented, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. Did you get any other applications?
That was the only one.
Thank you. All right, we have a recommendation that the request from the Kerwood Adelaide Metcalfe Optimist Club be approved and granted pre-budget approval in the amount of $4,750 in accordance with the council grants policy. And further, that the request from Kerwood Adelaide Metcalfe Optimist Club be approved for in-kind contributions. And further, that the staff be directed to prepare correspondence and issue payment to the above noted organization in January 2025. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Nordoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is 10C, our corporate policy manual update, and it's in respect to holiday closure policy, and I'll turn this over to our CAO, Morgan Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk, and through you to council. This is the first of probably a few corporate policies that we'll be presenting to council. This one hit my plate a little bit too late in this year, so our normal process in the future will be to revise 3 to 4 policies at a time, present them to council at a council meeting, and then at a subsequent council meeting, look for consideration of approval. That would just give council a little bit more time to review and understand the policy, provide feedback to staff, depending on how you want to potentially change or edit any of the policies in the future. This one did sneak up on me a little bit. I'd hoped to get it done earlier in the year, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. So essentially what we're trying to do with this holiday closure policy is just clarify a bit of confusion in terms of some of the words used in the previous policy. There was 2 interpretations. Here we have a very clear single interpretation. The biggest one was to close the office at noon on on Christmas Eve. That would allow staff to either head home to get ahead of Christmas Eve dinner, for example, or have a potluck or a Christmas lunch or something along those lines. Here we just have a very clear date and time, including to Johnny's point, he was laughing at me the other day, including EST, so Eastern Standard Time. The other changes that I propose in the policy is really just an office procedure, set your out of office, including emergency contact information. We've had that issue in the past just for clear and seamless communication. So beyond that, the process will look a little different next time you see a corporate policy manual update, but given the essence and proximity to Christmas, I'd like to get this one potentially approved by council this evening. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Hey, thank you, Morgan. Are there any questions? No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. Then we have a recommendation that council receive the report corporate policy manual update regarding holiday closure policy for information, and further that the CAO be directed to implement the holiday closure policy immediately and incorporate it into the corporate policy manual. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor Kingma. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a recommendation that council adjourn to closed session at 8:01 PM pursuant to section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss the following matters. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, and this is specifically for an employee retirement. And the second item is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board, and that's in respect to appeal of Committee of Adjustment decision. And the third item is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and specifically the servicing agreement between Adelaide Metcalfe and Strathroy regarding Grogast Court. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Nordoff, all in favor, and that's carried.